American bikes. Next month we're going to go back to American. We'll probably have to move into the Asian world for the months after, but I'm going to turn over this month's Rusted Restoration to David Pritchard. I think we're going to hear a story about a Norton Manx, if I'm not mistaken. All right.
Okay, so you know what it actually looks like. I did some pictures. I'll pass those around. About, what, 5 years ago? Oh, 5 years, huh? Thereabouts, yeah. A friend of mine in Wisconsin phoned me and says, Chappie knows, an old chap's trying to unload some bikes. He used to go around after the races in the U.S. and buy up old bikes. And he says, he's got a couple Nortons, are you interested? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll take them. Whatever they are. He sent me a couple of Polaroid shots, bad Polaroid shots of them. And it turned out to be a 59 Norton Manx, which you've probably seen. The 52 Manx Norton, and a spare engine, which I gave to John. So the 52 Manx Norton, after some research, after we started the restoration on it, turned out to be Clanford's Daytona Manx, which he won Daytona in 1952. This has been confirmed by the Norton Owners Club in England. It's a double overhead cam, plunger frame. The last year the Nortons ran at Daytona, the overhead cams.
Before they were banned.
Before they were banned, yeah. This is the 5th year that the overhead cams won Daytona in a row, shutting out Harley. Harley, well, the AMC banned Nortons, which was by 52 was basically Harley. Indian didn't have much say; they were going bankrupt. Harley couldn't win, so they changed the rules. That was the end of the Manx Nortons, and they had to run the road version. Manx Norton had to have a center stand, had to have a kickstart. They had full primary. It was a road bike, no race bike. No, couldn't run a race bike. They still won. And they won every race, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. They run them, and there was 10 Nortons running in every race. This was a factory works race bike, and the double overhead cam Nortons were different for Daytona, and the fact that they had the cast-in fittings for the exhaust lifter. If you stalled your bike on the sand, you better have an exhaust lifter because you weren't going to bump start it on the sand. And there's a lot of things different on the Manx on the Daytona models. This is the 4th last plunger frame made for the Manx. They discontinued the Manx. Nortons were actually effectively discontinued in Europe for racing in 1950, when the Featherbed came out. They were only continued on for Daytona. It took 5 years of fooling with this silly engine. I have to attribute most of the work on the motor to John. He's a local expert on British singles in this province, I'm sure. And it turned out really nice, you know. None of you have seen it. You've seen it in parts maybe at John's, but nobody's seen it together. So it's a rare bike, and we actually had John fired up. We fired it up at the Norton Rally this summer. It does run.
We finished it the weekend before the rally.
Finished it the weekend before the rally. We always like to work on deadlines. And there's a picture of both engines. You see the difference between the double knocker and the single knocker, the Norton engines, yeah. Rear motor, the rear head, I've talked to experts in New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. They've never seen an exhaust lifter on a Daytona head. There was probably not more than a dozen ever made, and they were only shipped to Daytona. They were never used elsewhere, because they always bump started them and never had kick starts on them. So it's a full magnesium engine, magnesium hubs. We got it and they were pretty wretched shape, so John had to make up some dielectric and we had to treat the magnesium, get it back in condition, and did all sorts of things to the silly bike.
The whole engine, the whole gearbox, everything has been ground up. So is the bike. One of the silly things that happened was when we first started this, we didn't know it was the works bike, but we knew it needed some parts. And there was this ugly back mudguard on the bike with this ugly aluminium strap over the top.
Yep, throw that out.
So, you know, you've gone through the parts books, what you need, and this aluminium stay just kept getting thrown back in the parts bin because it was obviously made up by someone who'd owned the bike in between. So you finally researched this, you're getting down to know everything you want to know about the bike, what it's got to look like and how it fits. And by this time we've made up the rear mudguard, we've painted it, it's all been drilled, and we've got the rear mudguard to fit on there. And we're looking carefully at pictures of the Daytona Manx. This ugly aluminium bracket with a hole drilled in it is the identical bracket that's on Clanforth's bike with the picture of him sitting on. It's not a factory part, it's one that Francis Beard made to liken even the factory one. And we've been throwing this around and almost tossing it, God knows how many times. It is now back on the bike, and it meant re-welding up all the holes we drilled in the back mudguard, Jerry repainting it again, and this was the sort of thing that happened with his bike. Several things got done 2 or 3 times just because we suddenly found out what we really had and where we've been going wrong. So it was a long restoration.
Long restoration. So it runs. It's a neat looking bike. So, any questions? I need to thank John and Jerry for the painting and John for the engine work, but it turns out great.
Sounded nice as well.
One thing we'll add to that, folks, the Bison Rally this year, the Bison Rally, June 28th, 29th, 30th. Those are our dates this year. This is the year of the Norton. I have to guess, if you don't come this year, if you haven't seen a Norton Manx in real life, you might not see one.